My bill is a very simple bill. It's a page long. It repeals the ban on crude oil exports that was first established back in 1975. It repeals it in its entirety. It's not phased in, phased out. It just repeals it. Very simple. And then it requires a study of what to do, if anything, with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which we established at about that same time as a buffer against any future Arab oil embargoes. Back in 1975, when the ban was put in place, the world was a different place. U.S. production was declining, imports were increasing, we were in a bad economic situation, and it was felt at that time that oil was of such strategic importance that it should not be allowed to be exported. It is the only energy commodity that is so restricted. We export coal, we export natural gas, we even export wood chips and electricity, but we don't export crude oil. Now, oil is fungible, Mr. Chairman and members of this subcommittee. There are differences in viscosity and sulfur content, but basically oil is oil. It can go anywhere. If we had a barrel of West Texas Intermediate and we had a barrel of Saudi Light, an expert with some testing could tell the difference, but nobody on this committee could tell the difference. So the reason that I think we need to repeal the ban is pretty straightforward. U.S. oil production is increasing. It's over 10 million barrels a day and going up, at least for the time being. We produce more oil in Saudi Arabia, which is number 2, or Russia, that is number 3. If we were to repeal the ban on crude oil exports, we would allow U.S. producers to sell their oil to any willing buyer, whether it was domestic or foreign. What difference does that make, you might ask? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Because we have a ban on producers selling on the world market today, they can only sell to domestic refiners. Now, that's not automatically a bad thing. I'm a friend of the U.S. refinery industry. But because they can't sell on the world market, and because there is such a glut of oil being produced in the United States, U.S. refiners don't have to pay the world market price. So they get a discount, what I call a domestic discount. Now again, that in and of itself is not automatically a bad thing, but what they do, the refiners take this discount, they offer our producers less, they refine it, and then they export on the world market. We're exporting about 3 million barrels a day of refined products. Those products are sold at world market prices. But the producer who's producing the crude oil is not getting the world price. Now that discount has varied over time. Right now it's about $10 a barrel. It's been as high as $30. If we repeal the ban, Mr. Chairman, on crude oil exports, that discount disappears. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing for U.S. refiners, but it will be a good thing for U.S. consumers, because putting more U.S. oil or any U.S. oil on the world market will tend to depress or at least stabilize world market prices. And that will result in lower pump prices over time for our consumers, whether they be in Massachusetts, California, Texas, or wherever. So, Mr. Chairman, my time is about to expire, but let me simply say this is a win-win. It's a win for the consumer, it's a win for the producer, it's a win for the strategic interests of the United States, and it puts pressure on the Saudis and the Russians, which are not, at least in the case of Russia, is not always our friend. With that, my time's expired. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the hearing and thank all the members for their attendance.